All right. So welcome, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed the conference. I hope you went to some interesting sessions. I learned a lot. This session is about migration from PowerShell 5 to PowerShell 7. I like to treat it as a renovation because migration is not fun. It's very cumbersome. You got to work a lot, but hopefully, like a renovation, at the end, we'll get to enjoy all the cool PowerShell 7 features, everything that it has to offer. So first of all, thanks to our sponsors for helping make this conference happen. It's great to have the opportunity to talk a lot about one of my favorite subjects, PowerShell. A little bit about myself. My name is Milgrom. I worked in the IT space for about 10 years now. I love writing PowerShell. I love automating things. Sometimes I even use these automations outside of IT. I create automated cat toys for my two really cool cats. Anyway, I am assistant engineer at Jane Street. Jane Street is a trading firm. If you came by our booth, you probably already heard about it a little bit. We love tech at Jane Street. It's more of a tech company than a typical hedge fund. We integrate tech to everything that we can, starting from trading, of course, but even the HR department has their own development teams that help them streamline stuff. And of course, that carries off to IT as well. So we love automating stuff. So what will I cover in this presentation? The first thing is the thing I'm most excited about is why you should migrate to PowerShell 7, what kind of features and advantages you gain by that. Then I'll go through, not in too deep, obviously not comprehensive, I don't have a lot of time, but I'll go through some particular changes between the versions. And then maybe talk a little bit conceptually how to handle these changes in the code. And finally, how to approach making the changes systematically across a large code base. So let's start with why migrate. This is the best stuff. First of all, PowerShell 7 is faster. It uses less memory. Why is that important? PowerShell 7, we use it, or PowerShell in general, we use a lot for monitoring systems. And since it runs on the actual workstation of potentially traders, potentially maybe people that don't want it to be affected by the monitoring system, it's important that the footprint of those monitoring scripts and software is very small. PowerShell 7 helps you with that. Next up, PowerShell 7 also has continuous support. It's being actively developed. It's also open source. You can check out the GitHub repo. You can file issues, you can participate in requests for comments, and in a way influence the future of PowerShell. The next one is PowerShell uses the latest .NET Core. You can do a lot more with .NET Core versus .NET Framework. Some things you probably shouldn't do in PowerShell, but that's besides the point. Then one particular thing that I came across is the usage of ALC, Assembly Loader Context, and there was a great session yesterday by Jordan, I think, about how you can use it to better manage dependency libraries in binary modules. The next one is the one that I'm the most excited about is the new language features, and especially the new operators that kind of make the code more concise and more straight to the point. You have the ternary operator for the question mark. You have null coalescing operator. You have a conditional array like index specification, and all of that just like streamlines your code. Instead of having like repeatable if statements everywhere, it kind of just makes it more to the point. Finally, PowerShell 7 is also cross-platform. Now, this may not strike you as a benefit, but if you're using PowerShell only to manage Windows systems, it's probably not relevant to you. But if you use it to integrate with other systems, or if you use it just generally as build scripts and things like that, then just having the ability to run your script both in Linux and Windows could be beneficial for you. So let's continue with changes. First of all, by looking at the sources for these changes, there are two great articles by Microsoft. The first one literally titled Differences Between Windows PowerShell and PowerShell 7. And these documents list everything from changes due to the .NET underlying .NET Framework to .NET Core changes, list of removed command, modules, and so on and so on. Specifically with removed commands, with removed modules, there are modules that you're still able to use in PowerShell 7 because of the WinPS compact session, I think it's called, that basically PowerShell 7 like open a session of PowerShell 5 under the hood. It's not great, but it works. But ultimately, you would move your code to not rely on PowerShell 5 at all. The engine changes and language changes that I talk about, the new operators and so on. One of the challenge with this with these sources is, first of all, it's a very long document. You kind of have to wrap your head around it. You have to consolidate all the information there. And also, if you take the document and you review maybe one of your scripts or one of your modules, then when you get to the next scripts or module, you have to do that all over again. There's no way to like really automate that. And if you have a large code base, this would slow you down. One thing before I get into this that I want you to think as I go through the different changes. Some changes were sort of a bug. Some changes are kind of a deliberate change in behavior. This change in behavior may be desirable to you, may be undesirable to you. Maybe it's a lot of work to adjust your code to get it to work with the new behavior, maybe not. So just keep that in mind as we're going through the different things. There are three things that kind of illustrate this point that are no longer an issue in 7.4, but I think it's a good example. The first one is remove item had a bug in it that if you give it a path with double slash in the path, it will basically just ignore everything after the double slash. You can see how that could be detrimental. Then there is export PS session. If you ran that command and maybe you have a GA module, or maybe you just run it against a PS session, and you export that to the disk, it would create type annotation that would only be compatible with PowerShell 7. Basically, no backward compatibility to PowerShell 5, which could be, as you migrate from version 5 to version 7, could be a little challenging. The last one was a deliberate change in behavior that anytime that you execute a native executable, it would simply, in PowerShell 7, it would simply just drop all the output into the result of the command and didn't raise an error record in the same way that it did so in PowerShell 5. So in PowerShell 5, maybe you didn't need to like wrap your native command so much because you just expected that any error would automatically stop the script. All of a sudden, you have to like consider it and look at it, change your code to handle the new scenario. So yeah, all of these things were remediated in PowerShell 7.4. Like I said, there was the request for comments on GitHub, and there were a lot of the big discussions, especially on this last one, and eventually they reverted this behavior. Native executable even got their own error preference variable, so you can specify whether you wanted to become an error record or not. So let's dive more into some particular changes that are still relevant today and you still have to consider. The first one is remove commandlets, and I include in that also removed modules. That includes calls to WMI, get WMI object. There's add PS snapping, and there's the event log modules, all of which will either replace or completely dropped in the case of PS snapping. Now, PS snapping was completely dropped because there wasn't a wide adaptation, but basically people weren't using it much. But if you are stuck with a system that does use it, it will slow down your migration to PowerShell 7. One particular one is Citrix, which we've been in touch with them on that. They were working on getting the code into PowerShell 7 compatible binaries, but it's not there yet. The next one are the .NET changes, subtle changes in behavior that you probably never thought about. The hashing is one of them. A particular change was that in PowerShell 5 or in .NET Framework, hashing was deterministic. So if you ran get hash code, or the more applicable scenario is hash table keys are getting ordered in the same way, basically by calling get hash code. So this thing were deterministic. So if you had a hash table in one process and a hash table in another process, they would come out in the same way. In PowerShell 7, that's not the case. And if this is applicable if you export your hash table into a file, the file would look different, even if the content is not necessarily different. Just might be different lines. Maybe it's not so crazy. You shouldn't really rely on the order of hash table keys, because kind of the point of hash table is that it's you don't really consider that, but maybe if you export the hash table into a repository and you use it to like commit maybe configuration as code and so on, maybe that will affect you. Then there was another change with the split method on the string calling split method, which would consider it got some new overload for the method in .NET Core, and because of that it changes the behavior. Also something to look out for. And finally, my favorite one is JSON conversion. Convert from and to JSON have subtle changes in behavior. Not always it will affect you, but it's just, I think it's worth highlighting the differences. And I have a little demo just showcasing these differences. So bear with me. So hopefully you can see everything okay. I have here PowerShell 5 on the left and PowerShell 7 on the right. And I'm just going to run each line in both windows, and you can see for yourself how it's different. In PowerShell 7, converting a string that is similar to sort of a datetime will return you a datetime object. You can see on the right. And on the left, you have, it just returns the original string. Why that might be applicable? Because maybe in PowerShell 5 you wrote a lot of code that will convert your string in the JSON that you're consuming from your APIs into a datetime object, and now all of a sudden the JSON already is returning the datetime object, and maybe things could go wrong in the way, especially if the datetime string didn't have a time zone in it. It can cause some issues like changes, like it will automatically assign it a local time zone versus an unspecified one. The next one is the null pipeline filtering. This is not really about convert to JSON itself. Like, it's not really about how it converts to JSON. It's more about how the command accept pipeline's input, or general pipeline handling in PowerShell 5 version 7. In version 7, you can see that you get an array with the null in it. In version 5, you can see that you get just an array with only 2 items. Maybe it's going to be a problem, maybe not, but you have to consider that. The next one is the empty result of a script block, and that sounds like not very applicable. Whenever do you do that? But the empty result of a script block is just any general function that only have statements in it and doesn't return a deliberate null or a deliberate value. So let's see what's going to happen here. PowerShell 5 gives you this strange empty JSON object. PowerShell 7 does the right thing and gives you a null. So back to my point before about the change in behavior and whether that's desirable or not, it seems like PowerShell 7 does the more right thing here, like assumes that an empty object is a null, but who knows how it's going to affect your code. We had a case in particular where our particular API was expecting the PowerShell 5 way, and when we changed it to PowerShell 7, it was kind of a no-brainer, like what's gonna change in the JSON, but things actually broke because it was very strong typed. The next one is also same kind of things. It's you would assume that the PowerShell 7 way is definitely the desirable one, and even in PowerShell 5 it sort of does that, but it's just peculiarities. So in PowerShell 7, if you run this first command, you get no results back because the array gets unwrapped. The array doesn't have anything in it, so it doesn't return anything. In PowerShell 7, in PowerShell 5, if you run the same command, it also does the same thing, so that's good. But this is only because you pass the array directly in the pipeline. If you have a command that produces that array and delivers it from through the pipeline. So here I used just a JSON array string and piped it into convert from JSON. Technically, any command that generates an empty array, this behavior would be the same. But if you run it in PowerShell 5, you get this weird value and count properties. It basically takes the object of the array and converts it to a JSON. In PowerShell 7, this does the right thing, and it doesn't return anything, just like the first command. Let me just clear this here. The last one is also related to array unwrapping and how it transfers through the pipeline. And if I run it in PowerShell 7, it does the right thing and gives you just a nested JSON array. If you do it in PowerShell 5, it again does this weird thing where it converts the object of the array rather than the array itself. If you had like the second object here that was an actual object, like let's say a equal the array, it would actually do the right thing and give you a nested JSON with a nested array in it, like properly. But so just strange things. Now, these are pretty random examples. Maybe you think it's not applicable to me. I illustrated that at least one was applicable. The datetime can definitely, especially if you're working with multiple time zones and you have monitoring scripts that are working on different regions of the world, it might affect you. It might bite you. So next up, I wanted to talk about conceptually about these changes. We said some of them are just bugs, clear bugs. Some of them are desirable or undesirable behavior change. Are they good changes? Are they bad changes? And more importantly, how do we want to change our code to handle those changes? So one option that you might be tempted to do, and it is okay to do that sometimes, and that's basically creating a wrapper function that will mimic the PowerShell 5 behavior. Essentially, let's say there was the out null, the out file function was defaulting, the encoding was defaulting to Unicode in PowerShell 5, and then that changed to UTF-8 in PowerShell 7. So hypothetically, you can create an out proxy file, maybe you can call it, and just like create a proxy function of out file that essentially would always get the file out with encoding of Unicode. And you plug it into your code, and every place that you use out file, you just put the out proxy file, and it should be good. You don't need to think about the changes in the code itself because you know that the new function works exactly the same as PowerShell 5. So that's one option. The other option, you could do different things. Either you say if PowerShell 5, if PS version, that major or whatever it is equals 7, then call out file with the parameter encoding Unicode. And if it's else, just call it without the parameter. So like branching basically, whether it's PowerShell 5 or 7. And or you can just write your code in a way, maybe like you decide, oh, my favorite encoding is actually I want bytes. I just want the bytes. Byte actually is not a good example because that also was changed. But maybe you want to use ASCII. So you just call encoding ASCII, and you don't have to worry about 5 versus 7 because it will behave the same. So that kind of like the two different approaches. And I personally think that the second option is a lot more preferred because it makes PowerShell behave like other programming languages where they make decision based on the environment that you're running on. Well, it's more like in the compilation stage, but that's the equivalent of PowerShell. And also, you kind of adopt the future behavior. If you do choose to do option 1, in many cases, you get stuck with the PowerShell 5 behavior. So let's say you use convert from JSON and you created a convert from JSON that doesn't do datetime conversion for strings that resemble a datetime. Then you just can't take advantage of it anymore because all of your code is still kind of in the weeds of doing the PowerShell 5 stuff. So I really recommend like taking the time as much as you can and basically updating your code to accommodate the new way. Obviously, that's more time consuming and takes more effort, but if you get the right people that are familiar with the code to do that, that will work well. So next I want to talk about how we approached it at Jane Street, upgrading our code base, which we use for everything in PowerShell at the firm to do anything from user provisioning, machine provisioning, servers or workstations, monitoring and general management. If you saw my colleagues John talk yesterday, he also showcased a particular use case for moving desk, and basically showing like a nice diagram on the screen that shows that the alignment is correct. So we use it a lot. We have a lot of code, 500,000 lines of it. Maybe it's not a lot in compared to software development, but I'm pretty sure it's the largest PowerShell repo I've seen for a single company. We have 200 published modules that do anything from integrations with external systems, Zoom, Slack, you name it. We have some published GA modules that facilitate our access to a restricted system. And since we develop so much in PowerShell, we use a lot of script analyzer rules to kind of nudge users in the direction of our style guide. So with that being said, we have a lot of code to evaluate and consider. How do we do it? What tools we have to evaluate the readiness? And the first one that comes to mind is a tool that does functional verification, I guess you could call it, Pesto. You can run the Pesto test in both 5 and 7, as long as the changes, the results are the same. There was a great talk about the test-driven development just an hour ago. And so you can run the test in both PowerShell 5 and 7, and if the results are the same, you should be good. There are some downside with it. It wouldn't give you like 100% confidence, mostly because, well, two things. First of all, it doesn't execute every line of your code, just because it's really hard to get 100% coverage. I think they call it code coverage in the Pesto terms. And finally, you mark a lot of commands as you do your Pesto testing. So let's say you had a get WMI object in your code, and in your Pesto test, you probably mark that because it's a unit test maybe, and you just never really hit that command, so you wouldn't know that's a problem. And in fact, for Pesto, specifically for Pesto, the integration tests are normally more valuable because they kind of like actually check that everything works well altogether. The next tool that we have is the PS Script Analyzer, which is great. There was also talks about different things that does. It's integrated with the IDE. If you're not familiar, it'll show some squigglies. Sorry. It'll show some like little squiggly lines under issues that you have. There are even out-of-the-box rules that can flag different things, different issues with PowerShell version. They're not too great. They're pretty static, but they definitely do some jobs. And like I mentioned before, we already use a script analyzer rule for the style guide, so we can write more script analyzer rules to do the PowerShell 7 evaluation. The other two tools that we use, or concepts, I guess, are code reviews, which is not really related to PowerShell, but loosely it helps us identify the code owners or the people that know most about this particular code, and get them to participate in this process of preparing the code, and we can move it forward with the knowledge that the people who are most qualified to update this code are the one putting a set of eyes on it. And the last one is the CI/CD pipeline. You can always put something, in the case of script analyzer rules, you can always put something if you have a couple of script analyzer rules that check if you have a get WMI object in the code. And basically, if there is one in the code, they're not going to let it release into production. And speaking of script analyzer rules, we did write a couple of them that do most of that. We consider deprecated command. We kind of scraped the Microsoft website. We added some flexibility around like identifying also parameter names and parameter values. I mentioned the out file. I don't think out file does that, but get content, you can specify the encoding byte in PowerShell 5. In PowerShell 7, it's instead of encoding byte, it's as byte stream. So that's kind of like an edge case that we put in place. It also flags that. Then you have also deprecated types. You have some changes around how you can set access or ACLs on files that is no longer available in PowerShell 5, in PowerShell 7. Command recommendations are more like the first three ones are more hard failures. So if you do use them, like your script will just terminate. The last one just the command recommendation just flags changes in behavior, such as in convert format to JSON or the out file that I mentioned. And then there is also HTML parsing, because now PowerShell 7 doesn't use the Internet Explorer engine, so it can't actually process HTML files. So it does some heuristics to identify that. Select objects is a very, very particular one in PowerShell 7. If you specify exclude property and you don't specify also property star, it will just not return anything. And then the last one talks about it's some .NET methods that will change in behavior. All of these rules are we actually published them to GitHub, and I'll share a link at the end. And all of them are generally extendable in the sense that if you need to add another deprecated command, another deprecated type, or another .NET method that you should be on the lookout for, you can do that very easily. So basically putting this all together and kind of like bundling it into a nice workflow that we can iterate over and incrementally go through our repository and update all of our code and get ready into PowerShell 7 is basically we start from scanning the codes with the script analyzer rules. We identify potential issues. Next, we identify the owners of this particular code chunks, create PRs for them. Everything is done pretty much automatically. We inject into the files like comments with to-do items so they can see it easily. We even create JIRAs that contains all of these issues, and then when the PR changes, it'll also update the JIRA and all of that stuff. That is not really necessary, but it's a nice automation. And finally, when the code owners figure out they resolve their issues, they'll update their code and test it with Pester. And if everything goes well, they'll put a comment on the top of the line that says PS7 ready on this date by this user. And from now on, as soon as this is released to production, any new changes to this file will also undergo the running again the script analyzer rule against it to prevent any new issue from coming into the same file. So we thereby assuring that we don't release anything new to the repo that has PowerShell 7 issues. So I don't have much time, but I have a short demo for this as well. I'll just show, this is a file that I intentionally created some issues with the different script analyzer rules. This will tell you that this type has been deprecated. You can see the set access control that's being flagged, the out file. Oh. Okay, how about now? Good. So yeah, you can see the avoid deprecated command, the deprecated types will flag the types that is no longer can't be used in PowerShell 7. The set access control, the commands that are no longer available, and so on and so on. This is a little file that basically runs the script analyzer rule against that file that I mentioned, and will showcase, one second, will inject these to-do items. So now you can go to the to-do tab and basically see the different things that are an issue. Then you can either fix them, or one more thing that you could do is, in case you do have branching, where you say if the version is PowerShell 7, then do one thing, if not, do another thing, using CIM versus WMI. Then you can add a suppression, which is just like a little tag. VS Code has a little, I think if you type suppression message rule, it'll like create the template for you, so you don't have to remember all of these details here. But you can see that as soon as I added it, get WMI object no longer flags, and if I do the scan again, it'll not flag. Invoke script analyzer is aware of it, so it's not going to flag it again at all. So this again creates this kind of process that we can do, that we can iterate over, and at the end slowly and incrementally go over through our repo, and have the people that are most qualified to, the code owners most qualified to look at the code, analyze it, and evaluate any changes to it. So yeah, I guess the last piece of this is this is not related to the workflow, but it seemed like I kind of have to put this, preparing the environment. And there was actually a talk by, I think, Michael yesterday, talking about how to bootstrap, whether it's Windows, whether it's WinPE, and various different things. Talking also about challenges with patching of PowerShell 7, and so on. So I'm not going to get too much into it, but the gist of it is that you need to change wherever it is, for GIA, for schedule task, for monitoring tool, whatever you use, maybe the deployment tool, Intune, or whatever you use, you kind of need to go through and change to PowerShell 7. And with that also comes some challenges. One particular thing is with GIA, which we hit a couple of very peculiar bugs. One thing was, I think, that if you run invoke REST method with use default credentials and then you run get AD user, it will crash because something get messed up with the credential cache. Very strange. We reported it on the PowerShell repo on GitHub, and hopefully they'll release a fix for that. But we are actually, I said we have 36 GIA endpoints at the moment. We already migrated maybe 30 of them, so we're down to the last 5. So yeah, this is pretty much it. The whole workflow that we worked on. It took some time to develop, and we learned a lot through the process. Just kind of bumping into different peculiar issues along the way. I still believe that it's totally worth it, and I can't wait for the day that I could just use PowerShell 7, especially the new language features, freely and take advantage of it. And yeah, since we went through this process, it took a long time. It was a lot of legwork. One thing that we share is the QR code here is the script analyzer rules on GitHub. Scan it if you liked it, and there are some instructions on how you can run it against your code. You can either adapt it to the rest of your workflow, or just if you have just a couple of scripts, that works as well. And now if you guys have any question. Yes?
When the code owner suppress the custom rules for any PowerShell 7 thing, how do you keep track of it afterwards? Pipeline or whatever?
Of the issues?
You keep the issue open, and that's how you did it.
Well, the question was how do I keep track of the issues that are coming from script analyzer along the way?
When they suppress those for now, how you keep track of those afterwards? If it's a longer process, if you can fix all of them at once.
So we do give a little bit of a leeway to the devs to decide what to do with it. So as long as they add a suppression, we just accept it. We hope that they do the right thing. There's also the code review on it, so hopefully you can put a little justification comment there. But essentially, when you rerun it again with invoke script analyzer, when there is a suppression there, it will not flag it anymore. I think it has invoke script analyzer also has a parameter for suppressions only. So yeah. Anything else? Yes.
So what was the rationale to migrate the code that it's compatible to Windows PowerShell and PowerShell 7 at the same time, instead of just migrating it to PowerShell 7?
Well, mainly because it's a large code base, and because we couldn't really allow for failures. If the monitoring tools are failing for whatever it is, it's maybe okay. If the provisioning and other automation things are failing, it's a lot more critical. So we wanted to keep backward compatibility along the way. That definitely adds another layer for it, and we can't use those language features that I love so much still, but I think it's worth it, especially with a large code base like that. Anything else? All right. Wrap it up here. Thank you.